It was 1977, and he was tired. That's the first thing you have to understand. He was physically tired and spiritually exhausted. The world still saw the king. They saw the flash of the jumpsuit, the curled lip, the memory of a revolution, and a single swivel of the hips. But the man inside that jumpsuit was living a different reality. He was 42 years old, but his body felt much older. It was a body that had been pushed to the limit for over 2 decades. The touring was relentless. City after city, show after show. The pressure to be Elvis, the icon, never went away. It followed him from the stage to his hotel room, from the adoring crowds to the quiet, lonely rooms of his home. His health was failing. It's no secret now. His weight fluctuated wildly. His diet was poor. And he was caught in a cycle of prescription medications. Drugs to sleep, drugs to wake up, drugs for pain, drugs for energy. They were prescribed by doctors, but they were taking their toll. They clouded his mind and bloated his body. He was often puffy, his movements sluggish. Sometimes on stage, he would forget lyrics to songs he had sung 1,000 times. He would lean on his band members for support, both literally and figuratively. The energy that once seemed boundless was now a finite resource, and he was running on empty. But there was something that never failed him, something that seemed to exist in a place untouched by the physical decline. His voice. In some ways, his voice in those final years was more powerful than it had ever been. The youthful rock and roll tenor had deepened. It had acquired a weight, a gravity, a richness that could only come from experience and pain. It was the voice of a man who had lived a life of unimaginable highs and crushing lows. It was a voice that held the memory of a poor boy from Tupelo, the ghost of his beloved mother, the echo of 1,000 gospel hymns sung in church. When he opened his mouth to sing, truly sing, all the physical ailments, all the exhaustion, all the fog seemed to melt away for a few precious minutes. The instrument was still pure. The spirit inside it was still fighting to be heard. He knew he was in bad shape. People around him knew it. They tried to talk to him, to get him to slow down, to take care of himself. But he felt a deep, almost crushing responsibility to his fans. They were the ones who had lifted him up, who had stayed with him through everything. To cancel a tour felt like letting them down, so he pushed on. He would summon the energy from some hidden reserve, put on the heavy jewel-encrusted jumpsuit, and walk out into the spotlights one more time. He was a deeply spiritual person. He read books on religion and the afterlife constantly. He was searching for answers, for meaning. He believed in a higher power, and he believed in a world beyond this one. This belief system wasn't just a casual interest, it was a core part of who he was, especially in those later years as he confronted his own mortality. He was thinking about his legacy, he was thinking about what he would leave behind. This brings us to a specific night in June of 1977. He was on tour, and the cameras were rolling for a new television special. He was in Rapid City, South Dakota. By all accounts, it was not a good day. He was lethargic, weak, he looked unwell, the people producing the show were worried. Could he even perform? For much of the concert, he was going through the motion. He sang the hits, he joked with the audience, he tossed scarves to the screaming fans. It was the Elvis show, the one he could do in his sleep, but it lacked fire. He was a man running a well-rehearsed program, not an artist bearing his soul. Then something shifted. He decided he wanted to do a song that wasn't a regular part of the set list. He walked over to the piano, a huge physical effort. The crowd quieted down. This was different. He didn't usually play the piano in his shows. He sat down heavily. He looked flushed, his breathing was labored, he was sweating profusely under the hot stage lights. The sequin jumpsuit seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. He looked directly at the audience and then at the cameras as if he needed to make sure everyone was paying attention. He adjusted the microphone and spoke to his guitarist Charlie Hodge, who held it for him. He was a king in slow-motion collapse, a dying star still emitting a brilliant, painful light. He began to play the piano himself, a few simple, haunting chords, and then he started to sing. The song was not one of his. It was a classic ballad from the 1950s, a song of immense longing and devotion. The lyrics speak of a love that endures over a long, lonely time. They speak of a hunger for a touch, a desperate need for a loved one to return. From the very first line, it was clear this was not just another performance. This was a confession. Oh, my love, my darling, I've hungered for your touch. When he sang that line, who was he singing to? Was it to a past love? Was it to his fans? Or was it to God? Maybe it was to all of them. His voice was thick with emotion. It was raw, desperate, and beautiful. He wasn't performing the song, he was living it. He was inhabiting every single word. The physical weakness he had shown just moments before seemed to vanish, replaced by a staggering vocal power that seemed to come from the very core of his being. Time goes by so slowly, and time can do so much. Are you still mine? In that moment, he was a man at a time. He was the young boy who had conquered the world, and he was the aging man who was losing his grip on it. He was asking his audience, the people who had defined his entire life, if they were still with him. After all the years, all the changes, all the bad press, all the unflattering photos. Are you still mine? It was a question filled with a profound vulnerability. The king was asking his subjects for reassurance. As the song progressed, he poured more and more of himself into it. His eyes were squeezed shut in concentration and pure emotion. The veins in his neck stood out. This wasn't the smooth, polished performance of a studio recording. This was a man wrestling with his demons and his angels right there in front of thousands of people. The performance became a prayer. When he reached the song's climax, he unleashed a wave of sound that was almost overwhelming. It was the sound of a man giving every last ounce of life and breath he had in his body, and it was a defiant roar against the dying of the light. He was showing the world, and maybe himself, that despite the failing body, the spirit inside was still immense and powerful. He was still Elvis. The final notes of the song hung in the air. He was visibly spent, gasping for breath. He had given everything. The band, the audience, everyone who witnessed it, knew they had seen something extraordinary. It was uncomfortable, and it was transcendent. It was the sight of a man laying his soul completely bare, using a simple love song as the vehicle for his final testament. And so, why did he feel this was a message from beyond the grave? You have to connect the dots. He knew how sick he was. He was surrounded by death in his spiritual readings. He must have felt, on some level, that his time was short. This performance was a conscious act of will. In a show where he had been coasting, he chose to stop, to sit down, and to deliver something of shattering honesty. It was a moment of pure, unvarnished truth. He was using the lyrics of the song to say the things he couldn't say in plain words. The song is about waiting. Lonely rivers flow to the sea, to the open arms of the sea. Lonely rivers sigh, wait for me, wait for me. He was that lonely river, flowing towards some final, vast ocean. He was asking the people he loved, his fans, to wait for him. He was telling them that he would be waiting for them too. It was a promise of a connection that would transcend death. The key line, the one that seals the entire message, is the final plea, God speed your love to me. Sung with such desperation, it became a direct prayer. Not just a line in a song, but a man's final request to the universe. He was asking for love to be sent to him, to sustain him on his journey, and he was in turn sending his love out to his fans. It was a two-way street. He was telling them that the bond they shared was spiritual, that it wouldn't be broken by something as trivial as death. Think about the context. This performance was filmed for a TV special. He knew millions would see it. It wasn't just for the people in the arena that night. It was for everyone. It was his chance to speak to the world one last time, not as a rock and roll star, but as a man. A flawed, hurting, but deeply feeling man. He was bypassing the legend, the myth, the caricature. He was giving them the raw, unfiltered truth of his heart. And the truth was, he was lonely, he was in pain, and he was still full of a powerful, desperate love for the people who had made his life possible. The performance became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Just a few weeks after that night in Rapid City, on August 16, 1977, he was gone. The television special Elvis in Concert aired 2 months after his death. So for the vast majority of people who saw this performance for the first time, it was quite literally a message from beyond the grave. They were watching a ghost, they were watching a man sing his own eulogy without even knowing it. The context of his recent death transformed the performance from a moment of incredible pathos into something deeply spiritual and haunting. Watching it now, you can't separate the performance from the knowledge of what came next. You see the sweat, and you see a man whose body is giving out. You hear the power in his voice, and you hear a spirit that refuses to be extinguished. It's a perfect, tragic, beautiful contradiction. He was saying goodbye, he was telling his fans that even though he had to leave, his love would wait for them. He was using the framework of a popular love song to deliver a deeply personal and spiritual farewell. He was reaching out from the edge of his life, trying to make one last, pure connection. He didn't need to write a letter or give a speech. He was a singer. His truth was in his voice. And on that night, he put his entire truth into one song. He was a prisoner in a failing body, in a life that had become a cage of fame and expectation. But when he sang that song, he was free. He was unchained. It was his final act of defiance, his final gift, and his final promise. He sat at the piano, a king in slow motion collapse, and sang Unchained Melody.